airstrikes against American citizens.
The horrors you've explored in your films have evolved from the fantastical, like the zombies of 28 Days Later, to the near-future terrors of a dying sun in Sunshine, or artificial intelligence in Ex Machina, now to the more grounded threat of civil war. Have you tracked these changes in your storytelling?
In some ways, all of those films, including 28 Days Later, bizarrely, are just reactions to something. I see my job essentially as a writer, and then I'm a writer living in the world and feeling stuff, and it might be conversations about AI, and it might be observations about the way humans act in a self-destructive way. In this case, it might be to do with, say, polarization or division, and the stories just float out of that. That's the common thread.
Civil war is politically charged, but it avoids deeming one side of the battle right or wrong. Why was that important to portray?
The film is trying to echo an old-fashioned form of journalism where you remove bias from journalism. I think within the film, you can see, just not in a signposted way, the answers to a lot of the kinds of questions people could ask. It's embedded rather than shouted, maybe.
Every time I survived a war zone, I thought I was sending a warning home. Don't do this. But here we are.
We noticed you use more needle drops on the Civil War soundtrack than in your previous films, including songs by Sturgill Simpson and the proto-punk band Suicide. Can you talk about your approach to using music in your films?
Really what happens in the edit is so in that whole post-production period, is you experiment a lot. You try different bits of music, different forms of music. You see what tonal effect that has. Sometimes you find a bit of music works really beautifully in the moment, but it unbalances the space either side of it. It's just a long process of finding what feels right, and also, I guess, not being too complacent in those choices and trying to be bold and not too safe, yeah.
On the subject of music, Oscar Isaac's dance number in Ex Machina is one of our all-time favorites. What all went into nailing that moment?
I just made a film called Never Let Me Go. I thought the film was very effective and successful in some ways, but there was something that bugged me, which was to do with the tone that got created, and I think it was successful at creating that tone, but the tone was not disrupted enough. And there was something about the lack of disruption that threw me. And I thought, I need to be more aggressive than that and more jarring than that. That was part of where that disco sequence came from, was just to interrupt and explode the tone that existed prior to that. And then there was something irreverent. In my mind, Ex Machina often functions in a subtle way, a bit like a comedy. I know it probably seems very serious, but actually there's a lot of what I would personally think of as humor embedded in it. I found that funny. I found that sequence surprising and funny. Then, though, it actually came down to Sonoya Mizuno and Oscar Isaac. So it begins as a bit of disruption and it ends with two actors just really delivering in a beautiful way.